Sup, you beautiful bastards. Hope you're having a fantastic Friday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. And if you're new here, on Fridays we do things a little bit different. We do it naked. No, we don't. On Fridays I try to cover more viewer-requested stories that didn't make it into the show this week, other stories that we were going to include, but for time's sake we ended up having to cut. And so with that said, let's jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today are several pieces of YouTube-centered news, some that unfortunately relate to me. The first being, which isn't about me, is if you use YouTube kind of like a Spotify, you listen to music a lot, it appears that you are about to receive a lot more ads than everyone else on YouTube. This concerning piece came from Bloomberg, who wrote, "People who treat YouTube like a music service, those passively listening for long periods of time, will encounter more ads, according to Lyer Cohen, the company's global head of music." Cohen then reportedly adding, "You're not going to be happy after you are jamming Stairway to Heaven and you get an ad right after that." Also, another fantastic quote from Cohen. He reportedly said, "There's a lot more people in our funnel that we can frustrate and seduce to become subscribers." So it appears that the actual game plan is to frustrate users into subscribing into a new paid service. And what I love is after this article came out, a spokesperson spoke with The Verge to clarify those comments. And they said, "Our top priority at YouTube is to deliver a great user experience, and that includes ensuring users do not encounter excessive ad loads. We do not seek to specifically increase ad loads across YouTube. For a specific subset of users who use YouTube like a paid music service today and would benefit most from additional features, we may show more ads or promotional prompts to upsell to our paid service." Yeah, no, that's how most of us understood Cohen's initial comment. He just said the same thing Cohen said, but in softer language. He was like bragging at the ways that they could annoy. And that said, I want to pass a question off to you guys. How do you feel about that? I don't know what you personally use for music, if you use YouTube in that way. And then two, how do you feel about YouTube doing this? But of course, that was a game plan for the future story. There's also stories that are happening now. YouTube made an announcement that they're changing their firearms policy. And what's really concerning to me is, in my experience, they have a real problem differentiating kinds of content and then end up suppressing content that should not be suppressed. Yesterday, I think, is a personal and fantastic example for me. Yesterday's video, about 40% of you that normally watch my videos have not seen that video. Don't think I posted yesterday. Seemingly because I talk about news on my show and I featured body cam footage about a shooting, even though we blurred, used best practices, and or because we had a weapon featured in the thumbnail of that video. That video didn't seem to go to people's home pages, the recommended feed. People that go to the subscription page seem to still get it, but a huge chunk of you guys consume the content the other way. And that is incredibly troubling. That is incredibly concerning. It ends up being the suppression of a very important story, not even just to the general public, but to people who have subscribed and said, yes, I want this kind of content. I've done this kind of content in the past before. And understand, this is a much different situation than demonetization. I didn't even try and monetize yesterday's video, but the seeming video suppression is incredibly troubling. I'm reaching out to my YouTube contact. Hopefully we figure out something with the situation, but right now it feels like, I'm not saying me specifically, but people like me are going to start being targeted more and more. But ultimately we'll have to wait and see, and back to the story. Last year, YouTube started cracking down on gun channels more than they previously had. Things like after the Vegas shooting, they banned videos that involved bump stocks. You also couldn't sell firearms on your channel or link to firearm sales. But YouTube's official policy now involves a lot more and what some are calling vague language. Along with that, it is now a violation if the video provides instruction on manufacturing a firearm, ammunition, high-capacity magazine, homemade silencers/suppressors, or certain firearms accessories such as those listed above. This also includes instructions on how to convert a firearm to automatic or simulated automatic firing capabilities. And there are some, like Sean Davis, the co-founder of The Federalist, that think the language is too vague. He argued, as written, it could even ban videos on how to safely clean a gun, since you have to disassemble/reassemble the firearm to clean it. And based on searching gun cleaning, that could affect up to 2.1 million videos. Also, if you search on YouTube how to build a gun, you get 25 million results. Also, other videos that people feel would be unfairly targeted would be videos on how to safely make reloads. And while these new guidelines are technically not supposed to be enforced until April, it appears that some channels are already having trouble. Recently, we saw Spikes Tactical, which is a firearms channel and manufacturer of firearms and other goods. Their channel was taken down. This for, quote, repeated or severe violations of our community guidelines. YouTube doesn't allow content that encourages or promotes violent or dangerous acts that have an inherent risk of serious physical harm. But eventually that channel was reinstated and a YouTube spokesperson said they were mistakenly removed, which to me, I will say personally, is just a horrifying sentence. Like, hey, you know how you built a shit ton of your career and your business on our platform? You're gone. Oh wait, it was just a mistake, our bad. I know it was your entire livelihood, but it was a whoopsie. Which is why, once again, fellow creators on YouTube, side note, always diversify your content and your money and everything. Don't rely on any of these people. The moment that you don't help them, they will throw you under the bus. And I don't mean that with YouTube, I mean anyone in business. But ultimately, that is where we are with this situation right now. YouTube's made this announcement. We will see how they enforce, but we'll see. And the last bit of YouTube news is more YouTube news is popping into the mainstream. YouTuber KSI had a massive piece done on him in Esquire. He covered his early controversies, the apology that followed, the evolution of his content since then. One of the big standouts from the interview that he did was about drama. And his quotes are interesting because it makes me wonder how many other YouTubers that are kind of in the same realm have a love-hate relationship relationship with drama. KSI saying, YouTube has been created in a way where you receive the videos that have the most attention. And unfortunately, as humans, the thing that creates most attention is violence and crime, beef and drama. Adding drama is always going to be an eye catcher. Ultimately, YouTube is a business, and YouTube is always going to favor anything that's going to create more views and more money. And there's more interesting stuff in the piece. If you're interested in this space, I recommend it for a read. But this piece stood out to me for a few reasons. One, more online creators becoming mainstream while remaining on the platform. Two, it's interesting to see the acknowledgement of using something that someone may not even personally be a fan of to succeed. But also three, I think that KSI, kind of to hit on a point that I mentioned earlier, is a fantastic example of long-term diversification on YouTube. Obviously, you have the videos and the merch, but now you have the movies, the books, the music, the now fighting, and then also being the director of the company that is putting it on. You love them or hate them, pay attention to the business model. Then let's talk about the infuriating news coming out of one of my former homes, and that is North Carolina. A 20-year-old by the name of Brianna Ashanti Lofton made news when there was a video released, and there was a version that had 1.5 million views. Of course, there were several versions. And in this 10-second video, you see someone from off camera take a cigarillo, put it up to a baby's mouth. That baby then makes a cooing sound, appears to inhale, and then let out a puff of smoke. And understandably, people were outraged by this, many people contacting the police. According to Raleigh police, the mother is now in custody, the baby is safe. Brianna has reportedly been charged with 2 counts of felony child abuse as well as marijuana possession. And reportedly, while it was not immediately clear what substance was in that cigarillo, it is important to note the mother was charged with marijuana possession, so what it looks like is she had this baby smoke weed. She made her baby smoke weed. I want to throw this woman off of a cliff. Who does that? That's her fucking 1-year-old and that's how she treats her? Garbage person off the cliff. And I don't even know how to end this story other than to say I hope she is punished to the fullest extent of the law. Then let's talk about, I know that yesterday I talked about the current state of American politics and the whole Trump, Biden, they're talking about fighting each other. Obviously the mindset of, is this really where we are now, comes from our history. But I think it is also important to remember that this is essentially a slap fight compared to what we saw from Kosovo this week. In Kosovo's parliament this week, in order to stop a vote, they did not filibuster. No, instead, members of the Self-Determination Movement Party used 3 tear gas canisters in parliament. Yes, really, it happened right before a vote was about to start. It was expected to pass by a 2/3 majority. All the politicians had to leave the hall. Then you see people in there with gas masks on. But ultimately, what we ended up seeing from this is that several members of the ultra-nationalist organization were detained. And after the gas cleared, the bill was passed thanks to 80 votes. And I'm sharing this story not because I'm like, this is where the bar for crazy is. No. But it is very interesting to see what else is happening in the world when we jump outside of our bubbles. Then, in one of the viewer requested stories of the week, some people wanted me to talk about the allegations that Donald Trump Jr. had an affair with Aubrey Plaza. Wait, wrong Aubrey. Aubrey O'Day. That's a completely different story. She was a singer, member of Danity Kane, reality star. And initially I didn't cover this story because there were no huge implications as far as an affair goes. Right, like with President Trump, with the allegations that he had these affairs while he was married to Melania and the potential legal implications, everything that happened allegedly to keep those stories from the press. Right, that can matter, whereas this, I'm not personally interested. But I will say, because it was recommended, I looked into it and I'm kind of shocked this story wasn't a thing before. Like before the news sources came out in the past week giving out information, like here are a few things that happened. On social media, she would talk about this relationship she would have where she never showed the guy. After she ends up breaking up with said secret boyfriend, she releases an album that has a song literally titled DJT, and in it she sings about a lost love. And if that wasn't enough, turns out on election night after Donald Trump was elected, Aubrey O'Day reportedly tweeted, "My story I didn't tell is worth millions now." Then if you pair that with the new information from sources, and when the media has reached out to Aubrey O'Day, her manager has responded that she's not commenting at this time. It kind of just seems obvious, but ultimately this story doesn't matter. But I do want to thank the people that recommended this because it pleased the reality TV show watching petty side of my brain. It was kind of a nice break from the general horrible we've just been talking about lately. Then we had requests to talk about the stock market because the Dow Jones dropped 724 points yesterday. And an interesting stat is it was the 5th largest one-day point loss in history, but also it was the 3rd largest one-day point loss in the past 45 days. Obviously, remember that percentage lost versus point lost, very different. And this whole situation is also meaningful for 2 reasons. The first being that on past shows, I've mentioned that the president for the long term might not want to associate himself with the stock market, which can fluctuate. Sure, you can do it, and when the stock market is flourishing, why wouldn't you do it? But the market does change. Especially because, 2, a lot of experts are crediting the shakiness of this market to the trade war that Donald Trump seems to be pushing. The drop that we saw yesterday happening the same day as the China tariffs were being announced. The US set to impose tariffs of around $60 billion on Chinese imports, as well as limit China's investment in the United States, this seemingly in retaliation. And in general with China, or at the very least, a lot more people than with the aluminum and steel tariffs. More people were on board with tariffs for Chinese imports. But it was the amount that was surprising. Even Trump's team reportedly initially saying that they were looking for something around 30 billion. And now we're talking about double that. And so one, now we've seen China respond with a proposed plan to slap their own tariffs on 128 US products. And two, we see what happens with the market, which I think it is important to note that this is not happening in a bubble. This is also happening at the same time as the Facebook fallout. And while that's happening, of course, we've seen people calling for regulation, which wouldn't just affect Facebook, it would affect anyone using the ad model. Alphabet, which of course is the parent company to Google, also saw a drop. Additionally, there was a change to LIBOR rates, which are actually at the highest they've been since 2008. LIBOR rates, if you don't know, are the interest rates at which banks lend to one another. And so there's just a lot happening at the same time. I'm not saying it's going to go further down. I'm not saying it's going to go up, but that's everything that seems to be feeding into the moment right now. And then let's talk about the news around Guccifer 2.0. Now, if you don't remember, that was the name of the hacker that took credit for giving WikiLeaks the DNC email. And there's been a lot of speculation about who this person is. Some saying they thought he was Russian. In fact, in January of last year, the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI assessed, quote, with high confidence that Russian military intelligence, General Staff Main Intelligence Directorate, or GRU, used the Guccifer 2.0 persona and DCLeaks.com to release US victim data. But they didn't definitively say that it was an intelligence officer, and they also didn't provide evidence. But in general, whether in official capacity or just as a lone hacker, there was a belief that there was a Russian. There were also those who believed that Guccifer 2.0 was Romanian because that's what they said they were. In a Vice interview from 2016, Guccifer 2.0 reportedly said, "I don't like Russians and their foreign policy. I hate being attributed to Russia," adding that he was from Romania just like the first Guccifer. But in that same article, Vice pointed out that when they spoke to him in Romanian, his sentences were full of mistakes. He would stall on more complicated topics in the language, leading to suspicion that he wasn't really Romanian. You also had Roger Stone, who of course is attributed to being a longtime Trump advisor, who has admitted being in touch with Guccifer 2.0, even posting pictures of their DMs. He, one, told people to stop blaming Russia, saying, "I think I've got the real culprit. It doesn't seem the Russians hacked the DNC, but instead a hacker who goes by the name of Guccifer 2.0. Roger Stone also saying, "I myself had no contacts or communications with the Russian state, Russian intelligence, or anyone fronting for them or acting as intermediaries for them." But according to new information, Roger Stone may be wrong there, and the CIA, NSA, and FBI were seemingly right. That brings us to Kyle Emke. An intelligence researcher at the cybersecurity firm Threat Connect led an investigation that tried to track down Guccifer from the metadata of his email. But that trail reportedly always ended in France at the same data center. MK then finds out that Guccifer 2.0 is using a service called Elite VPN. And reportedly, according to this Daily Beast report, Guccifer 2.0 failed to activate the VPN client before logging on, and as a result, he left a real Moscow-based internet protocol address in the server logs of an American social media company. This, according to a source familiar with the government's Guccifer investigation. Then adding, working off the IP address, U.S. investigators identified Guccifer 2.0 as a particular GRU officer working out of the agency's headquarters on Grizodubovoy Street in Moscow. And this is massive news because if everything here is on the up and up, not only does it show us that there were people in Russia doing this, but specifically Russia's government being involved. And that's a massive deal because Special Counsel Robert Mueller has never explicitly implicated Russian President Vladimir Putin. But all of a sudden we have this new information reportedly connecting Guccifer to Russia's largest foreign intelligence agency. But ultimately that is where we are right now. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens next. As far as the collusion talk, I feel like if anything, this information makes it seem that Roger Stone was unintentionally a participant. That said, we don't know if the investigation is going to reveal more information. This story does 100% though lend itself to the Russian meddling situation. As far as the meddling, I mean, I'm surprised that it's even a debate for a lot of people. Like at times it feels like a video of Vladimir Putin could come out where he's like, yes, hack the election. And people would be like, nah, fake news. But that said, that's where I'm gonna end this. This is the Philip DeFranco Show. I gave you the news, I gave you some opinion, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this story, the first one, anything in between. Let me know in those comments down below. And remember, if you liked this video, you like what I try and do on this channel in general, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Also, if you missed the last Philip DeFranco Show, you wanna catch up, click or tap right there to watch that. Or if you're in the mood for something lighter, you wanna see a little preview of the new space that we're moving in, click or tap right there to watch the newest vlog. But that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you Monday. I don't know why it's confusing. I don't know why I mess it up every time.